this and that, while you guys don't even know what democracy actually is. That's why we asked the question, say what? So, to begin, I'll define what democracy is at its bare bones and how you can take a better understanding what it actually does and is. So democracy is a word derived from Greek, demos, kratos. And directly meaning people's rule. That means the demos in demos kratos means people, and kratos means power or rule. That means democracy is equivalent to the direct or indirect rule of people. So you guys sitting here get to decide what will happen in your country and how it will impact you guys. So, simple, right? Maybe not that simple, because as you see, democracy can be found in many different types, shapes, and forms. Some of these are direct democracy, where the citizens, you guys, get to vote on what happens directly. Example, if they're trying to pass a new law, you get to vote whether it should be passed or not. There is representative democracy, in which you elect a leader from your population, from the people's population, that goes up and represents your voice into the system. And presidential democracy, parliamentary, participatory, Islamic, well, theocratic democracy, however, it's mainly found in Islamic countries, so people rather call it Islamic democracy. You got presidential, social, and more. So see, now you see why it's not very simple. So now let's look at the history of democracy to better understand its prevalence in our society and why it is the best form of democracy for you guys sitting here. So we have ancient forms of democracy. Believe it or not, before it was officially established in what year, I'll tell you later, it was actually found in prehistoric colonies, because when we were hunters and gatherers, there was no particular ruler. However, people directly voted, not necessarily voted, but made a communal decision behind what they should do as a group. Should they find a new place for hunting? Should they move near a new forest because they want to gather more fruits, more vegetative commodities? And that shows us that democracy, rather than being just an everyday government system, is the most organic form of government known to mankind. So now we go back to the point. So let's see where democracy actually began, like officially the demos kratos. And it began in 508 BCE. That means approximately 2,510 years ago. And it began under the rule of a ruler gone by the name of Plethines. And that's how he looked like in his portraits. And it was developed in Athens, Greece, and it was a direct form of democracy, meaning that people got to vote what happened in their country, what laws were passed, what were rules, and what were not. However, this was not necessarily very effective, as the population who could vote was limited to the 18 plus male citizens. And citizenship was only allocated if you were born in Athens and you grew up there, and slaves and all other inferior people were excluded. That means only 10 to 15% of the actual population actually got to vote. Not very nice, is it? And what happened around similar times is the Roman Republic was formed. And Roman Republic, rather than following what the Greeks had done, had similar ideas, and they created a republic. And this was one of the first forms of representative democracy, as the demos were the people. However, the power was given by the people to elected representatives, which formed the Senate, which made the decisions around what will happen in the country and how they will progress and how everything shapes out. And then it might seem to you like democracy, okay, now we began, and then there's direct and there's representative, that it funneled into one perfect form of democratic government. However, they said, how about no? This is because of many complicated reasons. But first, we need to understand how the governments actually function and how the demos and Kratos are formed. So let's look at determining the voter population. So the goal is to ensure everyone with a sound understanding of the surroundings and clear understanding of the people and their country should be able to vote. Well, people back then had different ideas of what they should be. First, it was based off of your age, as mentioned previously, 18 plus, gender. In Greek, males could only vote. Ethnicity, only Greek locals could actually participate in the voting. And occupation, as in slaves and other inferior jobs, weren't allowed to vote. However, over time, we got rid of one of these. And over time, ethnicity wasn't an issue, and then gender got eliminated. So nowadays, the demos is only limited to the age of the voter. As you might know, some of you come from democratic countries, 18 plus adults are allowed to vote. Now look at how the Kratos is formed. So who can actually run for this leadership role? Anyone, basically anyone. However, in the modern day, there are certain set allocations, especially let's take the US Constitution as an example. If you want to run for president in the US, you have to have a check mark across all three lists. You have to be a natural-born US citizen, you have to be at least 35 years old, and be a resident of the United States for 14 years or more. However, this does not say that anyone who fits these criteria cannot run for president. So technically, almost everyone can run. And these restrictions are mainly set to ensure that no corrupt person who does not necessarily like the country gets president and just completely ruins the country, and they want to ensure patriotism in these candidates. So now we can see why why the democracy stayed versatile and why it did not mash up into one single thing. As leaders and voters do not necessarily emerge from the rich population, rich and powerful. Even though some of them are rich, it's not necessarily coming from the rich. But what democracy does is eliminates that, and both the leaders and the voters come from the common population, which ensures a balanced system. So this gives us a few reasons as to why democracy has not changed and become one particular government system, but different, as they want to satisfy the people of the area. And different people who are brought up differently prefer different systems. And this is why different countries have different forms of democracy running them. And even modern day, there are two forms of democracies. However, they're both different forms of Roman representative systems. There are direct democracies, for example, Switzerland. However, most of the democracies in the modern day world are representative democracies. So let's look at the two different kinds of representative democracies. We have presidential democracy and parliamentary democracy. So what's a good population to see whether bigger countries and bigger democracies use which? So we have taken the top two biggest democracies in the world. Second spot taken by the United States of America, and the first spot taken by India. And they both are great examples of why different people choose to work under different democracies. So US works under presidential democracy, which is people vote directly to elect their representatives, the electoral college, and then the electoral college casts a direct vote to the president of the United States. And there are three different branches of government. There is legislative, executive, and judicial. And all of these come under different governing bodies. The legislative department is the Congress, basically the Senate and everything else. The executive branch is the president, and the judicial branch is the federal court, the Supreme Court, basically. And their power structure is something like this. So we have people, normally 18 years or older, which directly vote for the electoral college and governors and state legislators. And the Electoral college directly elects the president, which has to report to the Supreme Court, and then the vice president, which is part of the Congress, which consists of the Senate and the House of Representatives. And this structure allows for basically proof checking what goes on in the country and bad decisions are not made. The second form of democracy is parliamentary. Let's take India for an example. So the people vote for the members of parliament, and the members of parliament are chosen. There are certain allocated members of parliament from each state, and then the party which has the most members of parliament in the parliament gets, and their leader becomes the prime minister of the country, and then the parliament then elects a president which serves a 5-year term. And all the decisions are made in the parliament, which are further approved by the president and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court approves them, and the president just has to accept or deny the coming decisions. And then we have the elected representatives from individual states vote to approve the proposed law onto the president and the Supreme Court. Basically this, and just explaining how the members of parliament are chosen. I did not find a good power grid for them, Powers explanation, but here are some of the similarities and differences. So popular vote is not the suffice manner of election. However, popular vote from different states and comes together to elect a representative, and different levels of decision justification. That means, for example, if you have a dictator, he can't just say anything and then it will be approved. However, they have to go through different filters. And the population elect a representative with similar thoughts to themselves. The differences are basically the electoral process of the president, as in presidential democracy, the people indirectly vote for the president. However, in parliamentary, the parliament votes for the president. And the existence of a prime minister. In presidential democracies, prime ministers don't exist. And every state has its own constitution in the US, unlike parliamentary, where all the states have to report under the central constitution. Now let's look at some reasons why you guys should be interested in choosing democracy over any other political system. Firstly, it provides a balance between society and individuals, as it takes individual input into the society to form decisions, hence provide a better society for the individuals living in it. That presents a good balance, as some government systems, not mentioning any names, focus either on individuals or on society, which can lead to bad patterns of growth, which can result into starvation and other traumas for the individuals or even the society. That brings on to my next point, that democracy is a government system which allows for practical and balanced paths to development. Because if people of a country are deciding how fast they want to take this route of development, that means they'll be comfortable with how fast the country is developing. Hence, cases like extremely fast industrialization while the population is starving won't occur, and the people will be happy while the country is developing. Thirdly, everyone has equal right to power and equal right against power. That means nobody can just come in and take power and then expect to stay in power, because the people have similar rights to power and they can easily elect them off of the power. That provides a good power hierarchy and a constantly changing power patterns, which allows for, again, better development and good growth patterns. And one of the more reasons is freedom of media. Democracy allows the media to be free, hence different opinions and justifications of different decisions made by the government and the individuals are distributed over the whole country, which means people have a chance to get their opinion battled against what other people think and why things are happening in the world, in their country, which allows for better elections and just better leaders elections. The fourth reason is that democracy is very versatile, as it tries to make the population happy. It takes the form of how the people want it to be structured. make it versatile like water and a custom for the people that are part of this governing system. And just one last point is how would certain countries from history have benefited from adopting democracy as their governing system? As right now you might be questioning, well, democracy is all good, but then there were other systems that might have been better in your mind. You can take a look at this man. I believe you all know him. He goes by the name Angry Mustache Man. However, one surprising fact about him is that he never won a democratic election. Even though he was in power, democracy prevented Hitler from actually rising to power and being the head of a sovereign state, and causing around about 91 million deaths. However, because of the top-specific criteria and regulations, I am not necessarily allowed to talk about any more countries. I would just like to leave you with this quote by the great Abraham Lincoln, who, fought slavery and ended slavery in the United States. He says, "Democracy is a government of, by, and for the people." So this government is by you, for you, and with you. Thank you very much.